Zobe Sanje Riva, Shanson, Demo, Devarish, Jidin Jemba, Jubon, Deva, Kalo, Juvan, Lama, Tada, Meno, Demba, Sanje, Jumden, Benjo, Saja, Tuba, La Sazen, Rojo, Jamujo, Demba, Jumden, Lishin Van Rajuma, Yanda, Zobe Sanje Riva, Shazon, Demo, Devarish, Van Jidin Jemba, Jubon, Deva, Kalo, Lana Meba, Hada, Meno, Demba, Sanje, Bejawa Shajan to Bama Shazan, Children Yanzu, Damba Jumden and the Shinshima, Dajuma Yanda, Zovis, Shazun Damba Devarisha, one Jidin, by Jubon, Kalo, Lana, Tada Menanje Damba Sanjation, then Bejawa Shajan, Shazan, Children Yanzu, Kaze Ganyan, Sajan, then, Bombim, Manin Jidin, Tesekia Vajana Chazan, Nanda. Ishijazu Sejan Bombora, Chavan Jeden Soma. Boshuni Jana Chazan, Senjan Demba Chimenda. Selon Java Jana Chazan, the region of Siva Soma. Yame Chenshin Jana Chazan, Gumbutu Jechet, some Jechem. Sonomian Zushin, the Shinshan Chazan, Tabin the Judge. Giving us a letter to the show you why she knew Jana. Chene Java Lanya de Lava, Shingatam, Gendula, the Vajia Meja Java Puzos of Rabia Simne. Tenesan Yetambani, Karmara, Mas, Melan Loda Agenda, when the Jason, the Delta, Sonam Dia, Wanda Nejin, rather than Gadana, Shiva Love, Shiva Solen, the one Jover, show.
To the teacher, the blessed one, the one beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata and knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When the supreme among humans you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, win out the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme science, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with the qualities of a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to dustness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime, pure reality. To that Dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the great goal of seeing. subdue the four faults, and be delivered from the ocean of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I created by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I created by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I created by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
I think, yeah, page 354. So Chandikiti clear lights. All objects are characterized as well as a characteristic. Be the individual, the characteristic, or the universal, insofar they exist in the world, must be directly observable and not remain obscure. Therefore, together with the cognitions that have them as objects, all of these are established as the direct perceptions alone. So this is, very much, Prasangika school, so very uncommon, So other school, so they characterize as well as characteristics. They characterized in, like for example, they characterized as a table as impermanent. So they characterized, right? Table is impermanent means we characterize table as an impermanent, and the characteristics, the instant changings. How do you characterize this table as impermanent? Because this table is instant changing. And be the individual characteristics or universal, individual characteristic or universal generally, what characteristic, what character you are characterizing on the table is impermanence. And generally, the impermanent is a universal or the individual characteristics. So now you are bringing this universal, the character impermanence with the table, with the body, with the tree, with the weathers, right? So, and what is the characteristic that you're defining it through what? We define this tree as the impermanent by instantly changing. We define the weather is impermanent by instantly changing. We define the body as instantly changing. So in the Sanskrit, so they all use, if we go with, the Lakshas is always used with table, things characterize, I don't know what's that. The characterized with subject is Laksya, and the universal, generally character of that is also used the same word, Laksya. In Tibetan, when they translate, the translator used it differently. So the table they call senshi, so something need to be or something has characterized is senshi. And what is the characters, the universal? Then we say chenja. And then through what you characterize this. There's a definition, tini. So definition, character, the characteristics. So now Chandrakit is saying all objects they characterize as well as the characteristics, be they individual characteristic or the universal, insofar as they exist in the world, must be directly observable and not remain obscure. So now this is very much uncommon from other school. Other school, this says, universal characters, the characteristics, these are conceptually imputed phenomena. So therefore, these are not direct evident for the consciousness. So the Pratyaksa school says they are direct evident for the consciousness. So general and the particular, idea, the concept of the general and the particulars is, other minority school and Siddhantika school says this is mental projections. It's abstract, abstract. Therefore, it is not direct evident for the consciousness. So this is some kind of obscured phenomena and mental projections. It exists with imaginations. It exists with mental characteristics. So the Pratyaksa school says, no, these are not obscured phenomena. These are the direct evidence for the consciousness. So, because this is mental image, this is the mental characteristics, mental construct. Anything that mental construct has to be directly appears to the mind. Mental projections are all directly appears to the concept or the thought. So other school, this is this color, the smell, these are the direct evidence for the consciousness. And then the feeling, pain, pleasures, these are the direct evidence. And then this, the definitions, subject to define. So these are mentally created. So these are not direct evidence. And the Pratyaksa will say, yes, these are directly appear to the thought. So therefore, it is not obscured phenomena. It's the direct evidence for the mental consciousness, particularly not the sensory, mental consciousness. So this is the must be directly observable and not remain obscure. So when you imagine something, right? When you imagine things from the last year, so the imagination of the last year, 2024, is the Pratyaksa school says this is directly appear to your thought. So it is not obscure for the thought. It is a direct evidence for the thought. So therefore, together with the cognitions that have them as the object, all of these are established as the direct perceptions alone. So in the Pratyaksa school, now when you think about any kind of object, mental object or sensual objects, the Pratyaksa school says you can say that all of them can be a direct object for the consciousness. Some are direct object for the sensual perception. Some are direct object for the mental consciousness. So the Sanskrit word for the object characterized, Laksya, is the same as the one for, definiendum, right? So what is to be defined? So some translators they render the word as an object characterized in Tibetan, Tenshi, Mtshan, Tenshi. While others translate it is the definiendum, definiendum maybe. Two words. Do you pronounce this definiendum?
This is the word you asked about, I think, last class, right?
So it's kind of dum-dum for me. Yeah, Tenshi, and then Chuncha, Chun, Payadacha, Chuncha. So since the Sanskrit statement that the defining characteristics, the means by which something is defined, like a table is defined as impermanent through instant changing, as well as the object characterized, that upon which something is defined. What you have defined, impermanence. So that's universal or the individual characteristics. So the directly observable appears in the context of the defining, or identifying what direct valid cognition is. The directly observable appears in the context of identifying what direct valid cognition is. is within the fourfold divisions of the valid cognitions. So Musum Tema, direct, the valid cognitions, inferential cognitions, and then the valid scriptures and the valid reasonings. So these are the four valid cognitions. So this is the one of the so thought, thought which is conceiving the table as impermanent. So the table being impermanent, table being characterized, the impermanent is direct object for the thought, which is conceiving the table as impermanent. So he's not speaking here how an omniscient mind directly observes things. So here not talking about omniscient. So my thought, imagining car, is imagination the car is a direct object for my thought. So therefore, it is the evident object for the thought, and it is also obvious object for the thought. Nor is he suggesting that all the instance of the individual characteristics and the universal are evident facts, and that there exists no obscure fact at all. So for immediately after the previously cited passage, he writes, an inference is a cognition that has arisen through use of the faultless sign in the context of establishing obscure fact. Now, in the Pratyaksa school says, when you conceptually infer the table as impermanent through, instant changing, so the table being impermanent is the obscured object. Imagination of the table being impermanent is direct object. Right? You are trying to, perceive the table as the impermanent through imaginations. So imagination of the table being impermanent is the mediations between your thought and the actual, actual establishment that table being impermanent. So here, this inference is cognitions. Inference is the cognitions. Like table is impermanent because it is instantly changing. So that is the faultless sign. The cognition of establishing the obscure fact. The table is a direct evidence for the eye consciousness, but table being impermanent is not direct, not obvious object, not direct evidence for the eye consciousness or the mind, mental consciousness. So then, when the table being impermanent is not direct evidence for your mind, so now how do you do is you try to perceive the table. You try to perceive the table as impermanent through the reasonings. You infer the table is impermanent through the valid reasoning. So then that appearance of thought is still the direct evidence, but the actual table being impermanent is the obscure phenomenon. So I think the simple way is like when you are imagining tree, the imagination of the tree is direct evidence for the thought, and the tree is obscured object for the thought. So tree is perceived or known through imaginations, right? So it is like that. So nonetheless, whether it is perception of the individual characteristic or the universal, there does emerge in each of these cases the perceptions of that thing, and what is perceived is the direct object of that cognitions. So now the Pratyaksa school, what they're trying to say is, every consciousness, wrong or right, is always aware of what appears, directly appears to itself. It's aware of things. If you are imagining a rabbit horn, the imagination of the rabbit horn is it's direct evident to you, is obvious object to you. Perceived direct object of that cognitions. In this way, what is perceived and its subjective experience. Perceived and its subjective experience means object and subject. Perceived and its subjective experience, the cognition are characterized as being direct perceptions. Thus, Chandikirti understands the term direct perceptions Pratyaksa, to apply the faculties to this object and only derivatively to the subject, cognitions. Do you understand that? Yeah, I think to make it clear, maybe we have to go back the Sotantic school and Mainoni school, how they how they explain and describe direct perceptions. So the Mainoni school says the direct perceptions, sensual direct perceptions, mental direct perceptions too. Sensual direct perception, eye consciousness, which is seeing the color directly. So the direct perception only refer to the subject, the consciousness, not the color. So color is direct evident or obvious object. So they never use the term direct perceptions. So Sodantic school, Mainoni school, this thing. In the Pratyaksa school, direct perceptions is anything that is obvious, the object of the subject. Both are referred as the direct perceptions. When you see the eye consciousness seeing the color is the direct perception. Eye consciousness is the direct perceptions. So this is what Chandikirti is in the Pratyaksa school. what is perceived, the individual characters, the universals, they does emerge in each of these case perceptions of that things. What is perceived is the direct object of that cognitions. In this ways, what is perceived and is subjective experience. The cognition are characterized as being direct perceptions. So thus Chandrakirti understand the term direct perceptions, Pratyaksa, to apply the faculty to the object and only derivatively to the subject cognitions. So if all the appearance that directly perceived by the given cognition are direct object of that cognitions, then in that case, those appearance would be evident to such cognitions. So furthermore, if that cognition is non-deceptive with respect to what is being perceived. So now here saying, thought, imagining a rabbit horn. So the imagination of the rabbit horn is, direct object for the thought, which is imagining rabbit horn. Now, so this is, how's that? It is not the valid direct perceptions with relation to the rabbit horn. Is directly perceiving or evident to the imagination of the rabbit horn, not the rabbit horn. So yeah, then in the case appearance would be evident to the such cognition. Furthermore, if that cognition is non-deceptive with respect to what is being perceived, cognition is non-deceptive. Musum. So is non-deceptive with respect to imagination. So I'm thinking wrong perception like thought, which is perceiving the rabbit horn. So this thought is a wrong perception with respect to the rabbit horn, because which does not exist at all. But it is, it is the direct non-deceptive with respect to imagination of the rabbit horn. I think that's very, very, practical, because people who has many wrong thought, sometimes they are very confident, they are convincing that, right? They thought they know much about that. So which means it's something that obvious object to them. They think this is the real object. The meaning that is misinterpreted is the meaning to them. So therefore, they think, I'm very convinced that I know this meaning. So non-deceptive, miluva. Non-deceptive means valid cognition. Non-deceptive is the same. Sometimes when you refer to the Buddha, it says infallible protectors or non-deceptive protectors.
It means
Same, yeah. Valid is always says miluva. Yula miluva. Non-deceptive with respect to imagination, non-deceptive with respect to the actual object. So the wrong perceptions are always, non-deceptive with respect to its appearance, not the actual meaning. Right. So with respect to the actual meaning is totally deceptive. deceptive. The valid cognitions, as for the fact that when the cognitions perception of the perception of the object is established, the subject becomes object. As for the fact, when the cognition perception of the object is established by knowing the object, and the subject becomes established as well. So this is kind of saying that when you remember the blue, you also remember this, subjective experience of the blue. When you remember the taste of the coffee, which means you also remember the subjective experience of the coffee. So there's still, hinting that Pratyaksa school says there's no need reflexive awareness. Subject becomes established as well. This is exactly the same as before. This being so, even in the case of such mental state as the true self-grasping, even the most, wrong perceptions. The root of all the afflictive emotion is true misconception, true wrong perception, self-grasping. So they experience the direct perceptions of the appearance of the true form of selfhood. We have a grasping a self, grasping a self person. Imagine this grasping a self person is deceptive mind, because it, with respect to the actual object, is a deceit. But this grasping a self is also non-deceptive with respect to the appearance of the self. I think, so quite sure this. When we get angry, when we get jealous, we are 100% sure in that, that meaning, why you are angry, why you are attached, why you get jealous, why you upset. So you almost you have 100% sure about that meaning, which means, the self at the time of the, the emotional, that self, yourself, the person, is so vivid and so solid and concrete, 100%, it is truly exist. So that appearance is so convincing to you, that kind of, allows the emotional, to react in the without any hesitation. So even the wrong perceptions, right? The direct perception of the appearance of the true form of the selfhood. Furthermore, insofar as subjective experience establishes the evident fact of the perceiving of their object. This is again exactly the same here as before. In this way, we should also understand other cognitions that are erroneous with respect to their object of apprehensions. So deceptive with respect to their apprehension. So that, other than the Pratyaksa school, no school will ever say misconception is non-deceptive with respect to its appearance. Right? No school or thought. Only Pratyaksa school says. I think that's really kind of, sounds very practical, because when we get angry and attached, so we there's no any doubt, hesitations, So fully, 100% confident to react. So which means what confidence behind that emotional is things that appears to you is so vivid and so clear. Yeah, in brief, although all mental states are equal insofar as their appearing object, all mental states are equal insofar as their appearing object, the perceived object, are found to be evident. So there is, nonetheless, the great difference in their validity with respect to their object of apprehension, such as between the two forms of conceived selfhood versus the two types of selflessness. So first this is equal, a wrong perception of the right perceptions is equal when it comes to their own appearance, and then it is non-deceptive, that is obvious to them, and then with respect to their apprehensions, and then you can say this is the deceptive, this is the wrong perceptions. So between the selfhood versus the selflessness, between the permanence versus the impermanence, impermanence of the form, and so forth. So non-Buddhist school thinking that sound is the permanent, the nature of the sound is permanent. So with that respect, conceiving the sound as a permanent is wrong perceptions, is deceptive mind, because the sound is impermanent. Impermanent as a permanent is the wrong perception. But when it comes to the appearance of that thought, and that is not deceptive to them. I think when they, in their mind, when they think of a sound as impermanent, so they are imagining the sound, so kind of the sound that comes from the space, or some sound that disappears in the space, kind of go back to the nature of the space. Or sometimes this is the sound of Om is the permanent, not all the sound. Sound of Om is permanent. Why? And this is in the Brahmins, whole universal, the sound is Om. So why the Om is the universal, the Brahman sound? This is kind of like when things, for example, any kind of things, that color, the sound, the smell, when they form, so the origin of that is the Om, human being, or the tree, or plants, the rocks, the mountains, and things come. So it all emerged from the sound of Om. So if you try to tease them, so how who make that noise Om to make the mountain, make the human being? So maybe there is no person, and then why do you say is that the Bhagavan is creating. Is Bhagavan creating the planets and the human being by just reciting Om? It was just simply saying Om, 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 then the whole trees, the birds, the animals, the deers, the elephant, all comes, Does, does need to change the sound a little bit. So for the elements bigger, elephants bigger, mouse is smaller. I think in the Buddhist Tantrayana also used in Manjushri's root text, Anya Yingru Kunji Chokos. So Buddhist Tantrayana says, is the origin of everything. So which means what they are kind of, referring is the is the emptiness. From the emptiness, everything, everything happened, everything, So the perceived object are found to be evidence. Perceived objects are found to be evident. So there is nonetheless the great difference in their validity with respect to their object of apprehension, object of apprehension, object of appearance. Such as between the true form of the conceived selfhood versus the two types of selflessness, between prominence versus the improminence of the form, and so forth. Thus, the distinction between the valid and non-valid cognitions can still be maintained. In addition, these mental cognitions described as being valid with respect to their appearing objects. So again, it says every active consciousness is always being valid, non-deceptive with respect to their appearing object, having eliminated all the others' possibilities. Tashin Kebas. So, so if we, for example, if mind only school thinks that every reflections is through subjective, every recollection has to precede by subjective experience. So then, which means you have to perceive in order for recall, to remember the things. So who perceive the subject which which perceive the object? So this is what I'm saying. So again, it's if everything has to be perceived by the mind, and how about the wrong perceptions? Do they perceive, grasping a self has perceived the self, independent self, intrinsic self? So then says, Pratyaksa school says, you remember. When you get angry, you remember. You attach, you remember. If you've gone totally mistake and wrong, but you still remember. So, which means that every consciousness, when they actively engaging on the object, so all these, even the wrong or right perceptions, they are all non-deceptive with respect to their appearance. So therefore, by remembering the object, you can remember the subjective experience. So other than that, there's no possibilities, possibilities of recollections of, uh, object of anger, object of attachment, object of grasping self. So there's no possible to remember because all of the consciousness are the wrong perception with respect to their object. So must be recognized as a valid, direct mental perceptions in the relation these object must be recognized valid direct mental perceptions in relation these objects. Such mental cognition cannot be direct perception. In the form of the reflexive awareness. So mental direct perception, like eye consciousness see the color directly. So when the mental consciousness, perceived emptiness directly, just directly experience. So there is no dualistic, the kind of, is the lack of dualistic. So it still is not the reflexive awareness. Because the reflexive awareness, even the conventional, there is no subject and object. Mindfulness school, eye consciousness, the reflexive awareness is not two things. And even the conventional, you cannot separate. So maybe part of seeing the noble wisdoms, which is directly, directly perceiving the emptiness. So in that realizations, within the realizations, there is no dualistic subject and object, but still, you can divide them, emptiness and the realization emptiness. Know what has known and knowers, right? You can divide them, but in the face of the real, when you see the emptiness, you may not be able to see the separation of object and subject. So the form of reflexive awareness, since there exist dualistic perceptions with respect to their object, but still, even the direct mental perceptions, which is seeing impermanence or experiencing, pleasure or pain and whatever you're directly perceiving, but still, you can divide object and subject. Although the dualistic perceptions have ceased for the uncontaminated mind of the meditative equipoise, like first noble wisdom, the path of seeing, meditative equipoise, such meditative state and the ultimate nature of things can still be spoken of respectively as the knower and the known. You can still, So while in the meditation, you may not be able to see the difference, but you can divide. This is the emptiness, what it has known. This is the wisdom realizing emptiness is knower. Right. So this is totally different from the alleged reflexive awareness, an inward-oriented subject supposedly present in all cognition for which dualistic perceptions have ceased and yet still characterized in terms of knower and known. Within that experience, maybe there is no separate, but you can separate them conventionally or generally. For in the second case, except for the philosophical postulations of the subject and object relations, no matter how much one direct their mind, no image of the two things, no image of two things are known and knower can be conceived. The philosophical postulation, like minority school, where they describe the reflexive awareness, is, even in the conventionally, the eye consciousness and the reflexive awareness of the eye consciousness cannot be separate. There is no subject and object. So yeah, no matter how much the drag in the mind and can be in the first case, however, if one directs one's mind to it and speak of it to others, distinct aspect of the subject, the mental state and its object. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the suchness can definitely conceived. Now, when the non-conceptual gnosis of the meditative equipoise establish its object, the suchness, the emptiness, it also comes to establish through the force of these the subject gnosis, for which the dualistic perceptions of knower and known has to dissolve. In the face of that meditations, as to how this is not the same as the opponent's claim of the bare subject aspect, an inward-oriented subjectivity present in all cognition, for which dualistic perceptions have ceased, yet can still be described in terms of the known and knower. This will be explained below in the section on the resultant ground, the last sections. Probably we don't have to wait for that. So these kind of, how to pronounce it, nouns? I forgot the pronunciation. Kind of nuanced.
Oh, nuanced.
Nuanced. Kind of nuanced distinction may not be essential to those who, when the opponent turned back the objections we Madhyamika have raised against them with the line by what mean is this known? And so on, fail to comprehend the subtleties of the particular philosophical standpoint of the great beings. So nuance is the kind of nuance of the distinction may not be essential to those who, that kind of subtleties may not be, maybe not making sense to, minority school and things like that. But if you don't understand, the opponent turns back the objections the Madhyamika have raised against them with the line, by what means is known? What mean is this known? Yeah, this I don't understand. We're saying that.
kind of sounds like saying what evidence is there, by what means, like by what evidence do you
Yeah.
have that this is known?
Yeah, usually this is, in a debate, so what kind of objection comes, and then you have to say it like this. So, for example, it says, how can you say the grasping of self, two misconceptions, grasping of self, a person and phenomena, can be non-deceptive with respect to the object? Because these two cannot be non-deceptive. This is the whole, as a whole, is the deceptive mind. It is the wrong perceptions. And some masters, if they are new in the Pratyaksa school, they use like in Chandikiti, there's a not like killing, yeah. So this is Buddha Palita when he used like if things do exist by themselves, then if things do exist by themselves, and then if things do exist by themselves, and there is no point, no point of effect be arising from the cause. If things do exist by themselves, if everything is happened by themselves, and there's no point, something may come from the cause and the condition, because everything has to be voluntarily by themselves come. So then you don't have to say, I'm going to plant this seed and this, this seed and this environment, I'm going to produce this fruit, right? So if the fruit is by themselves as they're coming, and you don't have to, collectively look for the cause and the correct cause and conditions, right cause and conditions. Things are happening by themselves. So then, when the Buddha Palita said this, and then the other school may say, so does that mean you accept, things always, reappears by themselves? And the Buddha Palita says, this is not my, my standpoint. I'm just throwing in the hypothetical, because if things do exist by themselves, then things can be, things can be manifest, things can be arises pointlessly. So I'm not accepting things are coming pointlessly. The arising of the sprout is pointless. So here, sometimes some masters use this when they are new in the Pratyaksa school, they could not really respond to the opponents, their objections. And they says, oh, we don't really have actual standpoint. And we just simply throw hypothetical. So I think here I will have to make sure that this is the right, right to say in English. So the kind of nuanced distinction may not be essential. So kind of nuanced distinction, very subtle distinctions, like even the wrong perception is still right perceptions with respect to its appearance. So that kind of distinctions, may not be essential to those who, right, when the opponent turn back, so when the opponent argue back to you. So then say, so is that grasping of self is the right perceptions? Because it is the non-deceptive with respect to the object. It has perceived something. It has known something. It has realized something. So how can you say this is the wrong perception? If someone argue that way, right? Then you say, oh, we are the Prasangic school. We only throw the hypothetical. We don't even take anything back. Right? So this is what Lama Tsongkhapa was saying, Madhyamika have raised against with the line by means this is known. Maybe, yeah. And so on, they fail to comprehend the subtleties of the particular philosophical standpoint of the great being like Chandrakirtis, Nagarjunas, Buddhapalitas, and are unable to ground their own positions in the meaning of the definitive scriptures. So then you cannot really, propound your own school thought, because you just simply throw in the consequences all the time, and everything come back you don't accept. Oh, we just throw the consequences by saying that. So Prasangic school, here their standpoint is, yes, even the wrong perceptions is non-deceptive with respect to their appearance, not the non-deceptive. It is still the deceptive with respect to the apprehension object. What they are apprehending is the wrong. They are apprehending the intrinsic I, independent I, intrinsic phenomena. So that is the wrong with respect. And then people may kind of, the other opponent may still argue. So it's a half-half, So if there's a 50-50, so how can I say is, the whole wrong, the grasping itself is the wrong perception, because it's the 50% is right. And so then Prasangic school said, if you want to hold your positions, and this is the cognitions, proving to be wrong or the right is always with respect to the apprehension object, not the appearance. Yeah. It never determined that cognition is being right or wrong. Is whatever it is trying to conceive and apprehend. With respect to that, if it is mistaken, that is the wrong perceptions. So if somebody has sometimes people says, I see some people say I can talk to the God. I always have, whenever I want, I can talk to the God. Some the Hindus say I can directly talk to the Bhagavan. Buddhist says I can directly talk to the Tara, Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri. So then we cannot say you cannot say it is impossible you can really have the image of Tara and Avalokiteshvara. So we simply say, have you seen with your eye or you're just imagining? So you can be right to that imaginations, right? So you can have directly see the imagination of the Atara, imagination of Avalokiteshvara, but that does not mean you have directly apprehends that you can directly perceive the Avalokiteshvara Tara. So in that case, if imagination of the Tara is the Tara, then imagination is the water, imagination is the money, imagination of the house is the house. So there's no homeless people. Everyone can imagine, So if you don't have a car, you can just imagine the car. If you cannot buy, through the book, you have no enough money to buy, expensive car, but you can imagine the car. So that imagination, if that is the real object, and when you're hungry, you can just imagine the food. So no one can die from thirst and hunger. So all can imagine. So the imagination is not the actual object. So here, when you argue, you have to be, you have to be being able to ground at this standpoint. If someone argues it's wrong, even the wrong perception, the 50% is right perception, we say no, this is not. The cognitions being right or wrong is always measured from what is trying to apprehend something. So the apprehension object is non-existing, therefore the cognitions is wrong perceptions. Right. So so the point of great beings unable to ground their own positions in the meaning of the definitive scriptures or an extremely complex and settled path of the reasonings. Thus, in the response, such people may reply with statement like, since we have no positions of our own, we are not, this is right. We are not vulnerable to such faults. So the Prasangika school does not mean we don't have any position. So in this way, they seek, they seek heaven only in the, duplicitous bluster.
Yeah, duplicitous. I don't know what duplicitous means.
Huh?
Similar to deceptive.
In this way, they seek heaven only in, right?
Deceitful, yeah, duplicitous. And then bluster, I think, is kind of just talking, not really saying much, maybe.
I think actually it's kind of in the Tibetan, Nyundingmas. Nyundingma means like some people, how many you try to convince them through the logic never really makes sense to them. They still says, this is what I thought, this is what I feel, this should be right. Mm-hmm. So that's called Nyundingma. Is insisting their own, their reality must be truth. So this line is also, I think we have read that in before, seeking heaven, the duplicitous blusters. Seek heaven only in the duplicitous blusters. However, thinking of the learned people who are wise and gifted with refined intellect, those who are not convinced until and unless they have seen the path, distinguishes what is flawed from what is excellent on the basis of the settled point of the reasoning. I have offered my presentation here, as the Lama Tsongkhapa was saying now. I have offered my presentation here in the manner of simply opening the door to reveal how these excellent systems of the Chandikriti can be understood as flawless. So now, yeah, so it's clear, right? Understand, right? Any questions? I see Kevin is like sometimes people they mentally some disturbed. They see things like, you know. So even the therapist, whatever you bring, they said, I still see it. It's here. It's here. It's there. Like, but they insist in that. Even you try, you know, thousands of reasoning, and, you know, proven to be wrong, but they because it's so vivid to them. Sometimes they say, "Google happens," and Tibetan says, "Google happens." If the muted persons, when the muted person sees the God, that's a very big problem. So they do everything, you know. So they could not really explain what they are seeing. However, now questions. Now the I in the context of the remembering. I remember something. I saw the blue refer to the persons. I is referring to the persons, and then says I saw that blue color. And since the person and the cognition's apprehended blue are not identical, yeah, this is the kind of one of the, you know, people may have this kind of confusions. So the person and the cognition apprehending blue is not identical. How can such remembering of the persons saying, I have seen this before, I as a person, can be recollection of the blue apprehending cognitions? So when I say, if you hit by your hand, so I hit it, right? So when this in the mind, it's very clear. It's seeing the hand was, you know, the hand is the one that hit. But when we say, I hit that, when you kick by, I kick it. My leg has kicked. We don't say it. That this is not really smart questions. So response, it is true that the visual cognitions apprehending blue and the persons who is seeing the blue are not the same. Nonetheless, just as there is no contradictions in accepting the statement, I saw it, because the visual cognitions saw the blue object, likewise, why should there be any contradictions in taking the recollections of the persons occurring in occurring in the terms of I saw this before? to constitute the recollection of the visual perception of cognition of the blue object. So there's not much, tricks. So yeah, I have seen it. I saw it. Means your mind, the recollection of that. Also, remembering the object and subjective experience at the same time. Remembering the both at the same time. So there's no difference. There's no recollections of only the object, not subjective experience. There's no any recollection that is only remembering the subjective experience, not the object. So why not? Just by remembering the object, you can remember the subjective experience. If that is the if that is the case, by remembering the object, you can remember the subjective experience. Then you don't need the reflexive awareness. It's not necessary. By remembering the object, you can remember the subject. About the subject, because I say I, so therefore it has to be me, not my I. That is not nonsense. Just by seeing by eye, we say I saw it. Just by eating by mouth, I ate it. So now, today this is the wrong perceptions. The Pratyaksa school says the part of the wrong perceptions can be right with respect to its appearance. Yeah, this is totally uncommon from the other school. And the imaginations, this mental construct of the characteristic and the characters, So these are also, the Pratyaksa school says, these are the direct evidence, direct object for the thought. So other school, they don't say there's direct object. It is, they don't say it's non-deceptive with respect to the appearance. You have any questions? So it's kind of, from the scriptures, explicitly what it's saying is making the distinctions, here, particularly when you defined the valid cognitions or non-valid cognitions. So valid cognitions means non-deceptive. Something is correct with what you have apprehends. You are as you apprehend seeing this is the blue, as you apprehend the blue, it is the blue, and that's the non-deceptive. As you apprehend the yellow, if that thing is yellow, and then that is non-deceptive. As you perceived the body is impermanent, yes, in that respect, you are non-deceptive in that. So the Pratyaksa non-deceptive means just being, right about it, being correct as you perceived. So that is simply in the Pratyaksa. This is just non-deceptive. Valid means that. When Buddha scriptures as valid means as it meant, it is correct, logically approvable. So that means it's valid. So scripture can be valid, and the person can be valid, I sense power can be valid, consciousness can be valid. So then when you understand the valid and none, what is non-valid? I consciousness as valid with respect to the color, the air consciousness valid with respect to the sound, but still I consciousness can be known as invalid with respect to the characters of the color. Seeing color is intrinsic, independent, and that is non-valid. So then, if the I consciousness is non-valid with respect to the characters, the one of the character of the color, and how can you characterize the I consciousness as valid? So the consciousness, the whole as the valid and non-valid, is always measured from the main object. What this subject is particularly apprehending the color is the color as a blue, and it is the blue, then that cognition has to be valid. Anything that is valid, you still, you can still, find that is some manner is not valid.
There's no distinction between valid and non-deceptive. It means same or other difference.
So I think here the miluva is the definition of the valid. So because it is non-deceptive with that object, so therefore this subject is valid with that respect to the object. I consciousness is the valid with the color because I consciousness non-deceptive with existing of the color.
One with the eye disease, seeing the falling hair, is valid to the appearance of that hair, to that person, to that diseased eye.
Yeah, so even the diseased eye, which is seeing the bald man seeing the falling hair, So this eye is not valid with respect to the hair falling. There is no hair falling. But this can be valid with respect to appearance. The appearance of the falling hairs. This is directly appears to the eye consciousness. So the eye consciousness being valid, not valid, have to be measured from the object, what the main object is apprehending. Not all of them, all of the objects. So the eye consciousness, they say, for example, when you go to the rivers from the far, if you see the shell, and then there's a kind of like silver color. So the eye consciousness, is seeing the silver-like color, and that is the valid in that way. And also mentally thinking, maybe this is silver. It is invalid. Right. So, yeah. So now as a whole, as a consciousness is being valid means invalid or valid, it means it have to be measured for the object, the main object. What they're trying to see. It's just eye consciousness apprehending just, the kind of silver-like color or eye consciousness is perceiving it is the shell. So then this I consciousness is the valid with respect to the apprehension object. So what is main object is silver light, color, or the shell. So now this is the kind of, here the unique thing is Pratyaksa schools, even the wrong perceptions, they also have, certain, the valid, property or things, because with respect to its direct appearance, it is valid, it is non-deceptive. I think that's why you can say, it's kind of really it making sense, because the wrong, people who have wrong thought, wrong view, are more confident. So people who is always trying to write as less confident, because they know many times they go wrong, right? So the always seeing the wrong is very confident, because they can totally rely on appearance. Whatever appears, they are right about it. So you see, so these wrong perceptions are always the valid in there with respect to their appearance. Because anything that appears to mind is so vivid and so clear to them, so convincing. I think that's in the mental, what's that? One of the mental, in the delusional secondary minds, six root of the delusions, and the 20 the secondary delusions. So there's one, most of them is with like the haughtiness, arrogance, and deluded pride, and then spite, belligerence. So these all are very, very, mental factors. So they're very, how's that? What call? It's very sparkling, very active and very, puffy all the time. So I think why? Because this haughtiness, for example, haughtiness is so convinced, so how's that? So sure. This is what, and English is the haughty, right? The haughty. And in Tibetan, we say senju gyabwa, the fat mental factors. So it's, they don't want to move around, Yeah, any other questions? No questions? Yeah, then Chanju Semjo Rinpoche, Majebana, Jejuji, Jebanyamba, Mevanya, Kondo, Onye Tawa Rinpoche, Majebana, Jejuji, Jebanyamba, Mevanya, Kondo, Hamasimje Samje, Dada, Denjuji, Röthamje, Tatu, Toma, Chanju Semba Kanda, Sushebe, Tadakunji, Molam Jubji, Karera Veko Veshima, Penda, the Homo, Rejo, Jeresam, Tinzinja, Shabe, Sedia Badu,
May the precious body mind not yet one horizon grow. May that point have no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet one horizon grow. May that point of no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all Father and Mother sentient beings have all the happiness. And may all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. O powerful chanted Tenzin Gyatso, remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you much.